You know that feeling, right? That sinking feeling in your stomach when you're watching a massive batch of product just turn the wrong shade. One wrong move and you're looking at thousands of dollars down the drain. But what if you could swap out all that high-stakes guesswork for a method that's precise, logical, and repeatable? Well, today, we're going to show you exactly how to do that.
This quote from an industry veteran, it just says it all. The most common and the most costly error isn't some machine breaking down. Nope, it's a human one. It's that impulse to just jump in and randomly fix things without a real plan.
So you really have two paths here. Over on the left, you've got the path to disaster. It's chaotic, it's panicked, someone yells, "Just add a little blue," and suddenly the shade gets even worse. But on the right, that's the expert's path. And it's a simple but really profound shift in thinking. First, you analyze. Only after you've done that do you correct.
So how do you make that shift? How do you go from that panicked guessing to having precise control? Well, it all comes down to a simple, repeatable framework. We're going to break down the expert's entire thought process into just 3 logical steps.
And here they are. These are the 3 pillars of a perfect shade correction. First, you analyze what you're actually seeing. Second, you decide which pigment you need to use. And third, and this is a big one, you plan exactly how much to add. If you can master these 3 steps, you've mastered shade correction. It's that simple.
Okay, so before you touch a single gram of pigment, the first and most crucial step is to just read the shade. You do this by asking yourself 3 very specific questions. If you can get the answers to these, trust me, you're already 70% of the way to a perfect correction.
The first question is the most basic one. Just look at it. Compared to your standard, is the sample shade darker? You know, if it kind of jumps out at you, it's probably too dark. If it seems to recede or fall back a bit, it's too light. It's a simple observation, but it sets the whole foundation for what comes next. Next up, you need to identify the undertone, what we call the color cast. Is it leaning a little bit yellow? Does it have a reddish tint to it? Or maybe it's a bit bluish. Pinpointing this color direction is absolutely key because it's going to tell you exactly which pigment you'll need to use later on. And finally, ask yourself this. Is the shade clean and vibrant, or does it look kind of muddy and grayish? A clean shade has that fresh, crisp tone. A dull one just looks lifeless and flat. This tells you about the quality of the color, not just its hue. And believe me, it is a key piece of the puzzle. Okay, you've analyzed the shade, you know what's wrong with it. Now it's time for step 2, deciding which pigment to add. And we don't guess, right? We use a really powerful principle I like to call the compass rule, which is all about using opposite colors to neutralize problems. This little table here makes the chemistry so simple. If your shade is too yellowish, you add its opposite, just a tiny bit of blue or violet. If it's too reddish, you neutralize it with green. See how that works? This opposite color rule is your best friend. And for the simple light or dark issues, the logic is direct. If it's too dark, add white. Too light, add a bit more of your base color.
So we've analyzed the shade and our pigment. Now we get to what I think is the most critical step. And it's where so many corrections go completely wrong. Planning the quantity. Get this wrong, and the entire batch could be ruined. No pressure.
Look at that number, 0.01%. That's a typical starting point when you're adding organic pigments. We're not talking about scoops here. We're talking about incredibly precise additions. The level of control you need is just immense. And this example just illustrates the point brilliantly. Think about it. For a huge 100-kilogram batch, the fix for that yellowish tint might be just 10 to 20 grams of blue pigment. That's barely a spoonful. So the key takeaway here is to always start small. You can always add more, but you can never, ever take it out. All right, so we have our 3-step framework. Now let's see how this thing actually works in the real world. We're going to apply this logic to a couple of super common case studies that you'd find on any plant floor.
So here's a classic 2-part problem. The batch isn't just dark, it's also got this unwanted yellowish undertone. Now the amateur's first impulse is to just dump in a bunch of white pigment to try and lighten it, but that is a mistake that's only going to make things worse.
So yeah, the common mistake is to attack the darkness first. But the expert, the pro, knows you have to fix the color direction before you fix the lightness. The correct solution is a 2-step process. First, you add a tiny microdose of blue to cancel out that yellow cast. Once the color is neutral, then you can add a small, controlled amount of white to bring it to the correct lightness. The order here matters a lot.
Now for a more subtle challenge. Let's say your color is a perfect match on paper. The hue is right, it's not too light or dark,
but it just lacks vibrancy. It looks dull, lifeless. This is a quality color problem. So what do you do?
Well, the solution here is a really delicate balancing act. To boost that vibrancy, you can slightly increase what we call the strength pigment, which is the main color in your formula. At the same time, you might slightly reduce the titanium dioxide, or TiO2, which is a white pigment that can give the shade a chalky, flat look. It's a tiny tweak, but it can bring that color right back to life without changing the core shade.
We've covered the method and we've seen it in action. So to wrap all this up, let's crystallize this knowledge into a few golden rules by highlighting the most critical mistakes that you absolutely have to avoid.
Here they are, the top 5 ways to completely ruin a batch. Number 1, adding multiple pigments at once. Don't do it. You'll never know what actually worked. 2, using huge quantities. We've already seen why that's a recipe for disaster. 3, not mixing properly. Your sample won't be a true representation of the batch. 4, comparing a wet, fresh sample to a dry, aged one. The color is always going to look different. And 5, the most human error of them all, just losing your patience.
And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important piece of wisdom here. More than any chemical formula or technical rule, the most vital tool you have in shade correction is a calm, patient mind. It's all about thinking before you act. So, the next time you're faced with a tricky color correction, just remember this. Precision in color isn't just a science of pigments, it's an art of patience.
Day 7, you learn visual analysis, correction direction, quantity planning, opacity and strength control, real case correction logic. Tomorrow, day 8, we will cover a practical heavy topic, white and pastel shade matching, TI2 control, clean shade secret. And like and subscribe. Thank you.